Sorry, I think that was actually silent. Sorry. I'll just introduce everybody again. Sorry, my name is Lucy Heaney. I am from Global Galway here at University of Galway. Today I am joined by the Programme Director, Dr. Rónán Kennedy, and the Marketing and Recruitment Officer, Maria Ryan. I'll hand over to you, Maria.
Hi everyone, thank you for joining the webinar today. As mentioned, I look after the marketing and recruitment side of things with the School of Law, so I will be taking you through a brief intro and then I'll be handing over to Rónán, who is the Programme Director, who will provide a lot more detail about this specific LLM programme. So looking at the School of Law, one of our main aims is to deliver an innovative legal education. Then we are a school that is dedicated to an impactful, high quality legal research learning environment. And there is a lot of history esteemed within the School of Law. We have been teaching law since 1849, and this has been shown in some of our university and School of Law accolades. We were actually the winner of the School of Law in the year of 2024, alongside having other esteemed rankings from the QS World University Rankings. Today we will be discussing the LLM in Law and Digital Innovation, which is one of our newer programs. So I will hand you over to Rónán, who will go through a little bit of the course outline, some of the modules covered, and what semester one has already looked like.
Thank you very much, Maria, and good afternoon or morning. I'm not sure what time of the day it is, wherever you are in the world, to everybody who's attending this. So as Maria has already said, my name is Rónán Kennedy and I am one of the directors of this program. Maria also mentioned that we've been teaching law here for quite a long time, but that doesn't mean we're stuck in the 1800s. In fact, one of the reasons that I developed this program was because I felt that that some law schools really prepare students very well for legal practice in the 1800s, but the world has moved on since then, and I think it's very important that law students, intending graduates, intending practitioners, have the skills and the knowledge that they need in order to work in an increasingly digitized environment. If you're paying any attention to what's going on in the world at the moment, you will hear, no doubt, a lot of discussion around artificial intelligence, and that is one of the things that this program does look at in quite a bit of detail. It's not the only aspect to this. I think that over-focus on AI is sort of misses the wood for the trees to some extent, because AI is just one of the major drivers of change in the legal industry. But it is certainly important. And if you're paying attention also, you'll hear people say that AI means there will be no more need for lawyers. A postdoctoral student just sent me a link in the last few days of a senior French lawyer saying that AI won't mean the end of lawyers, but it will replace judges. I'm not sure any of those things are true. I do think, however, that there will be a distinction in the future careers of those who know and understand these new technologies well, know their strengths and weaknesses, and those who do not. I think that those who do not are likely to be left behind. So this program is aimed to give people a rounded set of skills and means for really thinking about what digital technology means for legal practice, what it means for the provision of legal services, what it means for things like access to justice, what it can mean for law firms or for government departments or whoever you might end up working for, and what it may mean for your own individual career. How can you be more nimble and more agile and move ahead of the technology rather than behind it, and maybe be a driver of change yourself in your own particular career. So Maria, if you could go on to the next slide, I might talk a little bit more detail about it. So what is special about this program? Well, what I've tried to do here is to build something distinctive from the ground up. I think a lot of other offerings in this space are taking useful and interesting modules on aspects of how law regulates technology from 10 or 15 years ago, and add a little bit of AI to them. But I wanted to do something new here, and I wanted to place these developments in broader contexts around how technology, not just AI, but the kind of remote technology that we're using now for this webinar, email, how all of these things change the way in which legal practice operates, the way in which legal services are delivered, the way in which individual clients, whether they're ordinary people in the street or they're big corporate clients, actually access those services, and to think about those, and to think also about the way in which the practice of law has moved, I think, from being essentially providing a traffic light, where lawyers are there to tell you whether or not you can go ahead or not go ahead with a particular business idea. And lawyers are often seen as a problem because they tend to say no rather than yes quite a lot. There's an evolution, I think, in the role of lawyers into being a trusted partner and someone with a better understanding of business and business imperatives. So that's included in the modules that we teach within the law school, but also there is the possibility of taking optional modules around topics such as digital transformation from the School of Business, which is something that you won't find in many or any other LLM offerings like this, and will give your skill set really quite a distinctive flavor. So in terms of the details of the curriculum, I'll talk a little bit more detail about that in a moment. But we will look at things like AI, we'll look at computational law, we'll look at questions like access to justice. And as I mentioned, there are modules from the business school on topics like visualization, for example, and ethics. The teaching is very much connected and integrated into research. I'm an active researcher in the field, so is everybody else who teaches on the program. For example, I'm just thinking about teaching, which starts next week. And I'm thinking I will make the focus for computational law in the first few weeks about the current controversy around Grok, which I'm sure you're aware of if you're paying any attention to headlines. And I'm going to integrate a postdoctoral researcher from the Technology and Rights Cluster into that discussion because she's doing work on online harassment. And I think that could be quite a fruitful conversation. There's also a strong practical dimension to this program. I have a background as a researcher in the Supreme Court of Ireland. And although I have a significant academic career with a lot of publications, I also keep a close eye on what happens in practice, and I have connections to judges and to practitioners. So I think it's important that what's done in the classroom maintains that connection to the real world, if we can call it that. I think that what happens in the legal academy is also just as real and just as important. But as students, you want to be sure that the skills and knowledge that you're learning are useful in your career. So in the computational law module, for example, you will actually be working with legal analytics tools, actually getting your hands dirty with the technology, learning how these things actually operate. And there is also a module on design thinking for lawyers, which I'll talk about in a moment. Actually, this might be a good time to go on to the next slide, Maria, because, and I'll start at the bottom just to confuse things, but on the bottom of that slide, you'll see design thinking for lawyers mentioned, and this talks about empathy-based approaches to building solutions. Again, this is about giving people skills that are relevant to the work environment and giving skills that are really at the cutting edge. This is the application of design thinking. It's quite a different way to approach problem solving, particularly for lawyers who generally don't think very much about people's emotions. It's one of our great contradictions that we're a profession that is about resolving conflict, and yet we don't talk about emotions very much in the classroom. But this module does that. You will learn how to apply design thinking, but you will do that in a practical real world context, working with external organizations, particularly NGOs working on access to justice issues, so that you know that what you're learning is actually valid when you leave. As I say, there's a module on computation and law. There's also a module on digital transformation and access to justice, which isn't mentioned on that slide, but they and future law sort of complement each other in terms of thinking about how law regulates computing and also how lawyers can make effective use of those kinds of tools, and then how the general public can be better enabled to access legal services, which are often seen as challenging and expensive and slow through digital technology. How can that help the law serve people better? And then there's also a module mentioned at the top of that slide there on future of law, which is about how is technology and other things altering how law and lawyers work. How do lawyers do their work differently? How do judges do their work differently? How do people experience the law? How does this, how, for example, does digital technology interact with concerns around diversity? Does it make it easier or harder for women, for those who have families and so on, to practice as lawyers, or so that they have more flexibility, or does that make it worse for them because they are now on demand 24/7 through the weekend? So there's a lot of interesting questions to be explored around how law is developing into the future. And that module is in many ways the pillars of one of the pillars of how that's explored within the program. But all of the pieces of the puzzle connect up to each other to give graduates what I hope is a good 360-degree view of all of the different drivers of change within law and legal practice, not all of which are directly connected to technology. And with that, I will hand over to Maria, who's going to, I think, take us through some other background content on the program, and then I'll be here at the end to answer questions.
That was great. Thank you, Rónán, for all of that detail. I think it's really great to get an insight into the modules and what the actual in-class learning experience will be like. So moving on to other unique course opportunities. Do you want to touch on this one, Rónán?
Yes, I should talk about that one, sorry. So I've touched on some of this already, but there are some aspects of the module that are, or the program that are a bit specific. So for example, we take students on field trips where relevant. The details of those change from year to year, but this year we brought students to Belfast for the launch of the Ulster University Centre for Legal Technology. We have connections with the researchers there. They're doing very interesting work on agentic AI and how agentic AI might replace the work of judges. We have a placement opportunity with McCann Fitzgerald, and we're working on building links with other major law firms. We bring guest speakers to campus and online as well. So it's one of the great benefits of the digital technology is it enables us to have a much broader network of connections rather than having to have people travel to Galway. Now I can bring in speakers from all around the world. So for example, I had Alex Hamilton, who's CEO of Radiant Law, who's a very major provider in this sort of alternative legal service provision space, who is someone who has a lot of views and thoughts on how digital technology is altering law. And you'll see some slides there from guest speakers. That's a guest speaker from McCann Fitzgerald at the top. And then you also see a photo from end of semester presentation as part of the Design Thinking for Lawyers project, which I've already mentioned. Back to you, Maria.
Brilliant. Thank you, Rónán. Now we will hear from one of our current students who's on the program. So I'll just play this short video.
My name is Cian Moore, and I'm doing the LLM in Law and Digital Innovation. I chose this particular postgrad because it's a new course and it combines the two most interesting areas in my personal life, which is law and technology. I just thought that the legal landscape is changing and it's a really interesting postgraduate course. There's always great group discussions surrounding recent developments and different readings that were assigned, so it's always great discussion. I really enjoyed my undergraduate experience as a university student in Galway. This LLM program will help me further tailor my career. That's the vibe behind my postgraduate degree program.
And that's just a snippet into some of the reasons why some of the students have chose this. It's because I suppose it's an area that's constantly developing. They also enjoyed Galway as a university city. So I will move on to talk about admissions and entry requirements. So Lucy will drop all the relevant links into the chat. And if there are any specific entry requirements or admissions queries, we can answer those directly, but all of the information should be in the links provided. And then just looking at Galway as a university city. So it was actually ranked #1 in Europe for student friendliness in 2024. There is a lot of culture that exists within the city. There is the International Festival, there's always arts festivals, film, culture. There is a lot of, I suppose, things to do as an international student. We're close to a lot of landmarks in Ireland. And I think as well, we are very close as well to the city centre. It's a university that's based just a 10-minute walk from the city centre, which I think is always important for international students to consider. This is a close proximity. As you can see, we really are based in the heart of Galway City. And looking at our current student body, there are over 27 nationalities represented in our student body, which makes for a diverse and inclusive student environment, which is something that is really important to us. And then looking at some of the postgraduate thought awards. So for our September intake, if your offer needs to be accepted by the 30th of April, and then we also have up to 50% of tuition fee scholarship for one student within the School of Law. And something else to note is that there is a Government of Ireland International Education Scholarship Scheme. So this is for any non-EU or non-EEA students within Ireland who choose to study here. And there are 60 places awarded across all Irish higher education institutions each year, and all of our LLM programs are considered applicable for this scholarship. But just to be mindful of the closing date, it is March 2026, and that's why we state about that, I suppose, the early submission of applications. So if you do have any questions, you can reach out directly to lawpostgrad@universityofgalway.ie. And there's also a lot of course information on our university website, which has been recently updated. So you'll get a more in-depth view of different modules, some of your lecturers. So it's a great tool and resource. So I will open the floor to any questions, and either Rónán or myself will be able to answer those.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Maria and Rónán. We'll just wait for questions to come in. I know that we had a participant earlier in the week who already had put their question in, and they were an offer holder, and they were wondering how long they get to accept their offer. Now, I know you mentioned the dates there already, but maybe they just would like that reiterated.
Yep, of course. So the specific offer date will be on your offer when you need to have accepted or declined the offer.
Perfect. Thank you, Maria. I'll just wait. And just for anybody watching as well, the email address that Maria has given there, that if you are watching this in the record, you're welcome to reach out and ask any questions that you might have. We'll wait a few more moments. It's a really comprehensive presentation and really interesting. It's such a topical subject at the moment, so it was very interesting.
And I might just say, while we're waiting to see if there are any questions from the participants, if anybody wants to contact me directly to ask me any questions by email afterwards, I will follow up. Perfectly happy to answer questions also. And my email address is ronan.m.kennedy@universityofgalway.ie. .m in the middle is important. I have a namesake elsewhere on campus, but all my contact information is on the law school website in any case, so I can be tracked down there.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Rónán. There doesn't seem to be any questions coming in there, but as I say, it was a really detailed presentation. So thank you so much, everybody, and thank you so much, Rónán and Maria, for joining us on this Friday afternoon. Take care.
It's great. Thank you.